The number of people forcibly displaced around the world has doubled in the past decade, and that is despite the impact of COVID-19. Now, the UN's refugee agency says more than 82 million people were forced to flee their homes by the end of 2020 as a result of persecution, conflict, violence and human rights violations. And more than 70% of the world's refugees come from just 5 countries, including Myanmar. May Wong tells us more.
The UN Refugee Agency warns that if the political crisis in Myanmar continues, the number of newly displaced residents and those fleeing abroad will increase. Now, the latest UN report citing figures from last year did not include the newly displaced persons as well as new refugees resulting from the military coup that happened in February. But already Myanmar ranks among the top 5 nations alongside countries like Afghanistan and Syria, where most of the refugees originate. Remember here that since 2017, about 1 million Rohingyas have fled from Myanmar into neighboring Bangladesh and are living in the world's largest refugee camp.
Access to food has been reported as one of the most commonly reported needs for Rohingya refugees, as largely there's a lack of initiatives on skills development. This is something Indrika mentioned. And I want to re-emphasize this, that skills development for the refugees, a lack of it leads to exploitation of adolescent boys, girls, and women in the form of various kind of exploitation, whether it's child labor, whether it's marriages, early marriages, trafficking, and other negative coping mechanisms. So equipping the refugees with transferable skills, which they can use when they return to Myanmar, will not only help with the income generation, but will also help protect women and girls in general. Most importantly, it will keep their hopes alive for a better future.
For more than 4 months now since the military coup in February in Myanmar, the UN says that at least 200,000 people conservatively have become newly displaced within the country. Now, the UN says that it's extremely concerned as the continuing situation may just add to the problem and also add to the statistic, which is already considered dire.
If there's an uptick of this violence, there is a probability, like we see in many other situations, that internal displacement then goes over and across borders into refugee flows. And that would be a real challenge for the ASEAN region, but not only, because we do see individuals also crossing into Mizoram area and Manipur in India and the Thai border as well. So yes, that remains an issue of concern.
Now, many of these newly displaced persons are made up of women and children, and they're lacking in items such as food, clean water, shelter, medication. On top of that, compounded with limited humanitarian access to the people in need. The United Nations hopes that other countries will be able to help resolve the crisis in Myanmar and also to prevent it from further escalation. May Wong, CNA, Bangkok.